How does a business qualify as an Indiana business? An entity qualifies as an Indiana business if it meets any one of the 5 conditions as set out in Indiana Code 5-22-15-20.5. Number 1, a business whose principal place of business is located in Indiana. Number 2, a business that pays a majority of its payroll in dollar volume to residents of Indiana. Number 3, a business that employs Indiana residents as a majority of its employees. Number 4, a business that makes significant capital investments in Indiana. And number 5, a business that has a substantial positive economic impact on Indiana. If you answered yes to this profile question about the Buy Indiana program when you completed or updated your bidder registration, you would have received an email very much like this one that goes through the instructions on how to apply for the Buy Indiana certification. It's talking about some of those points and some of the paperwork that you would be required to upload. So you'll want to gather that information. It then talks about you will visit the URL or link below, which will direct you to the Supplier portal, where you'll be required to log in with your user ID and password, and it includes a link to the Supplier portal. So I'm going to go ahead and open that here. It is labeled as the Supplier public homepage, and what you are looking for is the tile here in the upper left-hand corner labeled Sign In. You'll need to click it to access your application. You'll enter your user ID and your password before clicking Sign In. Here on the Supplier Secure homepage, you will have a tile labeled Buy Indiana application. Again, if you said yes to the question when you were completing your bidder registration. I'm going to select that. Here at the top left, you'll see some basic information from your bidder registration questions that you answered. On the right, you will see your Buy Indiana status will be initial in this moment. Here is a Save for Later button that you can complete some of the information, click Save for Later to be able to sign out and come back and finish up at a later time. When you have completed all of the pieces, you have a Submit Application button here, and just underneath that is a hyperlink labeled Attachments that currently shows 0 because I have not added any attachments. That count will increase as you go through the process to add them as required. There are the 5 Buy Indiana application conditions that are listed here. Each one of these has specific requirements that must be met before your application can be submitted for approval. Let's go through each one of those separately. If you click the radio button in front of condition number 1, a business whose principal place of business is located in Indiana, then you will see it's going to require you to attach a copy of your Indiana Secretary of State business registration showing that your business is registered as a domestic business. So here to the right, you will see an attachments hyperlink. You will need to select that to go retrieve that Secretary of State registration. Here on the Buy Indiana Application Attachments page, you will see a button labeled Add Attachment. When you're ready, go ahead and click that, and that will bring up the Select File to Create as an Attachment page, where if you have the information of where that document is stored, you can type it in the field, or you can click Browse to the right, and that will allow you to go find the document saved on your computer. It's automatically went to the correct place for me, where I'm going to select Indiana Secretary of State Business Registration. You can either double click that item or single click it, and it will put the file name here at the bottom of the page, and click Open to return to the dialog box where now that address is entered. When you're ready, you just click Upload and it will run the process. Here, when it has completed the process, under Attachments, you'll see the attached file name. So that is the name of the document that I just uploaded. I can absolutely update this attachment description if that only makes sense to me. I could view the document that I just attached to make sure I've got the right one. If it's not the right one, then I can select this delete row icon or the minus at the end of the row to remove it from the page. If I need to attach another document in this moment, I would just go back here to Add Attachment and complete those same steps to take care of that. When I'm finished, and I am here, all I need to do is click on OK, and that will return me to the Buy Indiana application, where I can see now that I have absolutely attached one document, and that counter has been updated here as well. You would be completing the same process that I just went through to add attachments to any of these conditions. Let's take a look at number 2, which is a business that pays a majority of its payroll in dollar volume to residents of Indiana. So I'm going to select that instead, which brings up more information here that I need to complete. It says, total amount of payroll paid to Indiana resident employees per most recently completed IRS Form W-2 distribution. And it's got a field here for me to enter that amount. So the amount of payroll paid to Indiana resident employees. I've got that number. The next line says total amount of payroll paid to all employees per the most recently completed IRS Form W-2 distribution. So that's all employees, and I have that number. And then I can see on the next line a checkbox that says, by clicking this checkbox, I affirm under penalties of perjury that the foregoing representations are true to the best of my knowledge and belief. So when I click that, it's going to return with signed by, and that is the user ID I signed in with, and it has date stamped that item. So before I left this, if I was finished, I'd be sure those numbers were correct. And I can do that by clicking in the box to make sure I have the right number of zeros there, and that looks fine. So let's take a look at number 3, if maybe that's not the case for me. A business that employs Indiana residents as a majority of its employees. When I select that radio button, I have more information here that says the number of Indiana resident employees per most recently completed IRS Form W-2 distribution. So that's the number of Indiana employees. I have that. Now it's got a line for total number of employees per most recently completed IRS Form W-2 distribution. So this line is for the total number of employees, and I'll complete that. Here I've got a checkbox with a statement that says, by clicking this checkbox, I affirm under penalties of perjury that the foregoing representations are true to the best of my knowledge and belief. So after I've verified that information, I can check that box, and it again will put the signed by, the user ID that you signed in with, and it has date stamped that information. How about option number 4? A business that makes significant capital investments in Indiana. If I select that radio box, it brings up some information here. First, for real property and equipment, please include the following. The first line is the total purchase price of the real property and equipment. I have that information. Next is official documentation of the value of the capital expenditures. Attach purchase agreements or Department of Local Government Finance assessment records. Now it's showing that I have an attachment already, and that would be the Secretary of State registration that I attached before, but I'm going to select that attachments hyperlink and go through the same process to add my document. I'm going to browse for it. And this was to be the purchase agreement. I have that ready. I can click on upload. And it has completed the process as evidenced here. There is my purchase agreement. I could attach my description. I could update that. I could view it. I could remove it. I'm going to go ahead and remove the Indiana Secretary of State business registration by selecting the delete row icon that says delete current selected rows from this page. The delete will occur when the transaction is saved. I'm going to say OK to that. And it has updated the page to remove that item. I'm satisfied with this page. I'm going to click on OK. If that was not the case that I was going to use for real property and equipment, I do have an option for leases that says, please include the following: the total annual lease payments. I know that dollar amount. It says a copy of each executed lease. So I would go back through that process to attach my lease documents. Maybe that's not it at all. Maybe you want to qualify under number 5 that says a business that has a substantial positive economic impact on Indiana. When I select that radio button, it says, this category requires verification from the Indiana Department of Revenue, or DOR, or the Indiana Department of Workforce Development. You will receive an email notification once the application has been reviewed. So I don't see any requirements in this area, nothing for me to attach, nothing for me to fill in. Once you are finished with that, they all require you to acknowledge and agree to the following statement by clicking the checkbox in front of the message that says, I certify that the information provided above is true and accurate as of the time of this request. I further understand that using any false or misleading information may result in prosecution for fraud, revocation of validation, and having this business placed on a suspension list, barring it from contracting or doing business with the state of Indiana or any of its agencies. So once you're ready, you can click that checkbox. Here underneath, there are 2 optional items remaining. You can indicate that you want your business to be included in the Buy Indiana listing in this box here. The first statement says, a Buy Indiana listing will let other businesses find you based on the goods and services you are interested in providing to them. To be listed, you must indicate you want a listing and you must be an Indiana business. So I've already taken care of that designation up here. I do want to be included. So if you do as well, you would select the checkbox in front of that item that says, I want my business to be listed as an Indiana business in the Buy Indiana directory. And before we conclude this session, I will show you where that directory is housed. I can go down and include a description, a short description of my business for posting on the Buy Indiana business directory. Again, that is optional. It's not required, even if you say yes, you want to include it. Again, both of these items are optional. They are not required. Before clicking Submit Application here, be sure that you have selected the right condition for your business. Be sure that you have attached the right and required documentation. Be sure, if you want to be included, that you have taken care of the Buy Indiana listing question and entered a description if you wanted to, and that you have absolutely checked this box that says I certify the information provided. I'm going to uncheck the box and click Submit Application so that you can see we do have some warning messages throughout. This one says an error is preventing the submission of your application. Please click the checkbox indicating that you certify all information is accurate before submitting your application. The response to that is okay, so let me take care of that and go down and check that box. So that would be a fail-safe for you. It won't let you submit the application unless you've taken care of that. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm ready. I'm going to click Submit Application, and I'm getting this message that says Buy Indiana application submitted successfully. Close this window, then click the 3 ellipses to sign out. And it's got these 3 ellipses circled. So I'm going to click Return here to close this box, and I am ready to sign out. So it saved the page there quickly. I'm going to click Sign Out to complete this process. So what happens after you've submitted your application? The review of your application could take up to 10 business days. If it's approved and you chose condition number 1, a business whose principal place of business is located in Indiana, then that approval is good for 5 years from the date of the approval in the email. If it's approved and you chose one of the other 4 conditions, then it's good for 1 year from the date in the approval email. That approval email is going to look very much like this one that says, after a thorough review of the information and/or documents submitted, and your company name would be inserted there, does qualify for Buy Indiana status under category number, and that would be the number that you applied through, of Indiana Code 5-22-15-20.5. This email serves as confirmation of that determination. Please note this Buy Indiana designation will expire on, it will give the month, date, and year of that expiration. If by chance your application is denied, you will receive an email similar to this one that says, after a thorough review of the information and/or documents submitted, your company name would be inserted there, does not qualify for Buy Indiana status under category number, whatever that was that you chose, of Indiana Code 5-22-15-20.5. If that happens, then your application status will be reset on the supplier portal, and you can complete the process again in 48 hours. Perhaps you chose the wrong condition or didn't attach the required documents that would give you that opportunity to try that again. If you chose condition number 5, a business that has a substantial positive economic impact on Indiana, the Department of Revenue will review your application. If the Department of Revenue approves it, then it's good for 1 year from the date in the approval email. If the Department of Revenue denies it, then it will be sent to the Department of Workforce Development for review. If the Department of Workforce Development approves it, then it's good for 1 year from the date of the approval in the email. If the Department of Workforce denies it, then you will receive the copy of this denial email. I promised that I would point out the Buy Indiana search page or the Buy Indiana directory on the Supplier public homepage here. It is labeled as Buy Indiana Search, and once you click that tile, if you elected to be included in the directory, you would be able to use any of the search information on the page to pull up your directory and find that information that you included during your bidder registration and during the update.